In the following series of microlearning lectures, you'll learn prompt engineering approaches adapted for a ChatGPT user. This will be especially useful for someone working on marketing tasks. Most of these approaches have a much more complex nature and come from machine learning engineering. But what we marketers and end users need is an approach that works with AI on a daily basis, without writing any code. An approach to engineer prompts that deliver on our goals. By the end of this series, you won't need to type requests intuitively or search through thousands of untested prompts. You'll learn to generate a prompt that you need using prompt engineering techniques and fundamentals. So, see you in a few seconds in our first lecture. In this lecture, we are going to discuss what ChatGPT is, what are its strong and weak sides. In simple words, ChatGPT is like having a personal chef in your kitchen. Just like chef in your kitchen would use recipes and tools to create meals that would fit your preferences, ChatGPT uses deep learning and innovative architecture to deliver human-like text. By human-like text, we mean answers to your prompts. The term prompts is going to appear quite often here as this is your preference, this is your request. The unique feature of ChatGPT is that it remembers your previous questions, your previous prompts in the chat, so it can improve and deliver better responses on your request. Unlike Personal Chef, ChatGPT has a few downsides. The first one is ChatGPT is not a reliable source of information. This moment of recording this video, ChatGPT doesn't provide sources of information that it uses. It produces occasional mistakes, so no, not all dishes are going to taste very well. It doesn't have full access to the internet, and it's not very good at searching and Googling information at this moment. I'm quite sure that Google's Bard and Bing implementation of ChatGPT are going to improve that, but at this moment, that's what we have. Last but not the least, servers are often at capacity. It happens due to a huge load on OpenAI's servers. Well, it happens because there are so many users trying to make use of it. ChatGPT has gained over 2 million users in the first 3 months of being published. That's a huge number. However, all of these weaknesses are relatively minor comparing to the huge advantages that ChatGPT gives. So, like most other AI technologies, ChatGPT is great at finding patterns and analyzing data that you provide. ChatGPT does way more than just writing social media or blog posts. It can provide almost an infinite amount of ideas in a matter of seconds. You just need to prompt ChatGPT right and know the process. One other advantage of ChatGPT that most people don't use is that it knows all professional frameworks. So whatever copywriting formula you have, whatever format of business or marketing analysis you want, it can handle it. This list can go on, but it's important to remember that ChatGPT is just one tool in your marketing arsenal. And the most important tool is your critical thinking. In this course, I want you to learn to understand this tool and to be able to generate your own prompts that will help you solve your problems. And that's way more long-term than just copying and pasting someone's prompts. But of course, we are going to have the prompt ideas that we discuss here in the lectures in a downloadable, copyable, pastable format. So this will also save some of your time. In this lecture, I want to draw your attention to an aspect that I'm sure many often overlook. Something that even some employees at Samsung have done. Right, so if you're like me working in an enterprise setting and handling corporate information, there's a crucial setting that we should remember to utilize, particularly when you work with confidential data. Of course, as a gray hat security measure, you can remove any brand mentions and any data that can identify your business, and you'll probably get away with it. But here's how to ensure decent confidentiality within ChatGPT. You'll need a GPT Plus account while working with confidential data. Then within ChatGPT window, open Settings. Then in Data Controls tab, disable chat history and training. If you're using a free version of ChatGPT, I would not recommend to enter any confidential data. It's also related to Bing Chat and Google Bard, as they use your input to improve their models. I know you came here for other things, but safety comes first, so please be safe and never underestimate your privacy, as it starts with you. Cheers, and see you in the next lecture for stuff that's a bit more fun. This lecture is about prompts. What makes a good prompt, what are the components of one good prompt, and how to build yours. Prompt is the main instrument that we use in ChatGPT when we interact as users. Basically, that's the input that we give to ChatGPT. That could be our question, instruction, or a task. Depending on how you give this instruction to ChatGPT, ChatGPT is going to either come up with a high-level generic answer or with a more profound, more detailed response. We should rely on its strengths and try to avoid its weaknesses. So, what are the components of a good prompt? First is an exact and detailed task. Second, a good prompt needs to have an information or context needed to complete the task. Third, it needs to be clear and precise without any abstract concepts. We need to learn to communicate our vision as AI develops, and our future prompts are going to depend on it a lot. Fourth is singularity. One prompt, one goal, one task. Try to use simple language and avoid confusing the language model. The fifth tip is to include instructions on what not to do. Just as we add negative keywords in Google Ads, this also helps us avoid any irrelevant answers. Now let's put it all together into one prompt template. We'll start with assigning a role, mentioning the industry, the company. We'll then continue with saying what we will provide and what kind of output we expect from ChatGPT. We then set rules on what it can do and what it cannot do. And then, finally, we provide any relevant input, like market data. In the next lecture, we'll discuss how to approach sequencing prompts. See you there. Zero-shot, one-shot, and few-shot prompting. The three variations of shot prompting are about giving ChatGPT complete autonomy to generate any response with zero-shot, to placing parameters and giving reference data with one-shot and few-shot prompting. This approach is something that most users figure out intuitively and end up disappointed by ChatGPT outputs. However, N-shot prompt engineering approach can be quite useful, particularly for generating quick ideas. Well, it's because while you're generating ideas, you want to remove any limitations and start with an open mind. Q&A, when you need a quick, high-level answer to your question, and then you can follow up. Translation, proofreading and editing, and writing social media posts. This approach is also useful for summarization. So here come our prompt formulas. Zero-shot. In this case, no previous data or guidelines are given before completing a request. So it basically just asks for an action. One-shot means that only one piece of data or guideline is given before completing a request. For example, given, semicolon, one piece of data, then prompt describes action that you expect from ChatGPT. Few-shot prompt engineering. In this case, as you might have guessed, multiple pieces of data or guidelines are given before completing a request. For example, given entry 1, then entry 2, then entry 3, and then your prompt, which describes, well, that action that you want ChatGPT to take. The prompts might be phrased differently, but should keep the essence. Let's discuss some of the examples. Here's an example of zero-shot prompt. Suggest ways to increase website traffic during Thanksgiving season, or describe unique selling points for a modern, AI-powered video editing software. One shot. Using my notes as reference, write a TikTok script for marketing education channel. Then my notes, copy, paste. Few shot example. Given, GoPro is an action camera for adrenaline hunters. We are releasing a new AI-driven camera, and it automatically starts recording, edits your footage, and sorts the scenes by action. And now comes the prompt. Give a 50-word informative post about the new camera release. Now, here's one more tip for the end-shot prompting engineering approach. While giving the prompt, try to start with a verb, and feel free to add any additional specifications like tone, length, and the goal of the post, or any other type of output. So let's summarize. There are 3 types of shot prompting, depending on how much previous data entries we are going to provide, or we can provide. These are 0, 1, and few shot prompting. This is a very simple technique, yet when you know why you're using it and how to use it, you're going to save a lot of time and get better outputs. We'll be getting back to this one later on. Welcome back, everybody. Most of our tasks in life are multi-step, meaning we need to take a few logical steps to solve a problem. Like all of the other techniques we discuss here, this one works equally great whether you're using ChatGPT, Google Bard, or Anthropic's Claude. Doesn't really matter. So what is chain of thought prompt engineering technique? Well, chain of thought is a prompting technique that helps us guide ChatGPT or any other large language model by breaking down the reasoning process into clear, digestible steps. This way, we can ensure that the answers are transparent, easy to understand, and highly valuable, especially in complex problem-solving or even analytical tasks. So why is this technique so important in generative AI? Well, first, it's clarity. Dividing reasoning into simple steps clarifies complex processes. Transparency helps us see how solutions arise, building trust and identifying potential errors. And analysis. Analysis takes multiple steps of processing data and information, and that's where chain of thought shines. So how do we use this prompt engineering technique in real life? It's very simple. Start your question as usual. For example, what are the potential competitive advantages of an AI-driven video editing app? And then simply add, let's think step by step. But what if you want more flexibility as to how ChatGPT thinks? In this case, you might want to provide your sequence of actions and logic. This works particularly great when you use advanced data analysis, also known as code interpreter, which we'll discuss in a dedicated lecture a bit later in the course. So the more flexible chain of thought formula is as follows. Your context plus goal, then act step by step, and then provide your logical sequence of actions. This type of prompting guides the AI to provide a response that includes each step in its thought process. This way, you can easily follow along and understand the model's reasoning and actually have more control over the logic. And there you have it, a simple, effective way to guide your AI in conversations, particularly when it comes to marketing strategy and working with market data. Now, here's a little practice for you. Experiment and combine techniques to achieve better results. For example, try to combine chain of thought with few-shot prompting. This is a great way of thinking about how to solve your task with the help of ChatGPT or any other large language model. All right, see you in a few seconds with the next technique. Self-asking prompting technique is the technique that we use with ChatGPT to ensure that the generated responses are accurate, precise, and tailored to your needs. In this lecture, I'll show you how to use this prompting technique, when you can use it, and I'll also add one additional twist and a productivity tip for this approach. And as well, in the very end of this lecture, we'll go through a ChatGPT conversation example that uses this technique. Self-asking technique involves guiding ChatGPT to seek clarification and ask for additional information before delivering the final answer. Let me draw you a little situation when you might want to use this one. So imagine you're a PPC or like paid advertising specialist who suddenly is asked to write a website article or create a social media content plan, which actually happens a lot at startups, for example. So you have a general understanding of marketing, but you don't know all the process and all the information that you might need to do it. In this case, asking for clarification using the self-asking prompting technique will save you. In other words, this approach is valuable because it enhances the quality and relevance of your responses, but it also helps when you don't really know how to accomplish something or you don't have enough context. So by encouraging ChatGPT to ask questions first, we ensure that it gets a clear understanding of the task and context before generating its answer. And it actually reduces the chances of misinterpretation, hallucination, and improves the overall quality of the responses. Moreover, you can figure out something along the way yourself. Implementing the self-asking prompting technique involves two quite simple steps. First, just write the prompt as you would normally do, using a short prompt or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Then you might want to mention what kind of questions and how many of them you might want to ask. If you simply say, ask me questions in order to produce better results, ChatGPT can ask you too many questions or ask you questions that are too vague, and it might be hard for you to respond to all of the questions. It would be hard for ChatGPT to understand everything that you've given, because that could just be too much of a prompt. So I find 3 to 5 questions are around the golden middle, and it keeps the response and information short and saves a bit of your time while ChatGPT is trying to ask you some of the most important information. Let me share a quick example with you. Here's the prompt. You are an expert in digital marketing. I'll be asking you to draft out a campaign plan, but if there's any ambiguity, feel free to ask me 3 to 5 questions before delivering the plan. And here's a cool productivity tip for this prompt engineering technique. The problem with it is that it takes a lot of time to type in all of the response to the questions asked. If you're using a Mac, then you can simply press F5 and start speaking. For any other systems, you might use an extension called GPT Mic or any other built-in voice input. Don't worry if punctuation or a few words are incorrect. ChatGPT is trained to figure these things out. And as with many lectures in this course, here's a cool twist again. If you work with many stakeholders, customers, or requesters, you most likely use a brief of some kind or a form that your customers or stakeholders fill out. You can dramatically increase your productivity by aligning your brief with a GPT prompt using this technique and the chain of thought prompt engineering technique. For that, you'll need to have a base prompt and a form that will collect the information in the exact same order. Here's an example of a prompt that you will use as a base. Guide me on creating a copy, step by step. First, study the context. Then ask me 5 questions about the audience, goal, and information needed for a social media post creation. Describe the audience, describe the goal of the post, and provide the information needed for the post. By the way, keep in mind that this isn't just an example, and you might want to include different fields for your prompt and your brief based on the needs and traditions of your company. Just make sure these are aligned. Right, let's quickly summarize this one. The self-asking prompting technique, or ask before answer. This technique ensures the accurate and tailored responses from ChatGPT. It involves guiding ChatGPT to seek clarification and ask additional questions before delivering the final answer. This technique is useful when you lack knowledge or context in a particular area. Implementing self-asking prompting technique involves writing a prompt and specifying the number of questions, and 3 to 5 questions. Strike the balance between the response length and gathering important information. Voice input can be used to save time when providing responses to ChatGPT's questions. Aligning a brief or form with ChatGPT prompt can increase productivity and ensure you collect the relevant information. The prompt and brief should include fields that match each other. If you feel like you need more flexibility, you can simply ask ChatGPT to specify what kind of questions you want it to ask you. I don't use it that often myself, but there are cases when this really helps me out. Anyway, I hope that you had fun experimenting with this one, and take care. See you in the next lecture. And meanwhile, stay here in this lecture to check out how these conversations go. I'll put some music here so that it's not that boring. Right, see you in a few seconds. Hi again, everyone. In this lecture, I wanted to show you a very cool twist on the ask before answer prompt engineering technique. And this one is going to be a bit different in its logic. So we are going to use the 5 why technique in order to get to more in-depth and more relevant solutions to our problems. This is a great way to go towards your desired output through a little bit of a problem-solving approach. So let's go to my screen and I'll show you how it's done. Typically, when we ask ChatGPT to ask us questions, we ask to do it right away, then we provide the response, and then ChatGPT comes up with the desired output. In this case, we go a bit more sequential. The 5 whys technique is a problem-solving framework that allows to get into the matter of the problem by asking 5 questions that start with why and do it step by step. So here we are in my ChatGPT, and let's start with the first example. The context is I'm preparing a local media press release for a fitness studio. The prompt would be ask me questions using 5 why technique, 1 question at a time. Once done, suggest a list of 5 topics and headlines. So here's the first question. Why is the fitness studio issuing a press release at this time? I would say to improve website authority and awareness. Then, why does the fitness studio believe a press release will effectively improve website authority and awareness? I would say they have a good domain authority and website traffic. So it was why number 2, then why number 3 directly responds to my previous answer, saying why does having a good domain authority and website traffic make a press release suitable tool for further improving website authority and awareness? I would say that it helps me rank higher on my target keywords and get more website visitors and leads. Then I have the same question, but to my last answer. Why is ranking higher on target keywords crucial for your fitness studio's online success? I would say leads and customers with high LTV. And then the fifth why actually strikes the real reason. And it really happens like this in real life when you interview customers for your products and product interviews. Then you really get to the truth in the fifth why. The response is that competitors in my city don't invest enough in SEO and getting good search traffic. And this approach gives me a marketing advantage. Now, finally, based on my input, here are 5 potential topics and headlines for your press release that could leverage your fitness studio's SEO and competitive advantages. Of course, I did not describe the advantages of the studio itself, but let's have a look at the examples. And the reason why we have a list of 5 topics and headlines is that some of those are just not going to be good, and let's accept this fact. So let's have a look at these 5 options. Topic number 1 says unique fitness approaches. The headline is innovative training techniques, how the studio name stands out in the city. I would say it's too blunt. Let's move on. The next one, transforming lives, real success stories from studio name. Kind of generic, but a bit better. And the third one is the one that I actually like. Building a healthier community. Fitness studios impact in the city. And that is actually one that I would probably choose. Let's have a look at the 2 other. Number 4, meet the experts behind Premier Fitness Studio. I would play around with it, but I like the experts behind, or I would even change it to people. So you see, you don't rely on ChatGPT in the final everything. You are submitting this, so it's our responsibility to come up with a final result. And don't be afraid to tweak a few words here and there. And the last one is actually very GPT style, with revolutionizing fitness in the city. Not realistic at all. Sounds a lot like ChatGPT. I would skip this one. But at least I have number 3 and 4 here, which are actually workable results, and something that I would need to think of on my own, maybe for a bit longer. All right, so let's summarize. Using 5 whys with self-asking or ask before answer prompt engineering technique is a great way to arrive at new ideas through problem solving. I hope you have a chance to give it a try and you like what you get out of it. And see you in the next lecture. Imagine a situation when you're working on a complex problem and you just feel like ChatGPT is not getting it right, or it's just not in the mood. This is where feedback-based prompting can help. First, do your prompting as usual and get the first response from ChatGPT. Your step number 2 would be to ask ChatGPT how it can criticize this response and suggest improvements. Alternatively, you can use your first draft or notes to get feedback and improvement suggestions. But here's a cool twist that's often overlooked. When you've been working on your tasks, have you ever thought about what your stakeholders would think or ask? Well, turns out that that's a cool way to think while prompting ChatGPT. This means that on top of asking to criticize or provide feedback to the response, you can even specify a perspective, like provide feedback to this item from the copywriter's point of view, or from the point of view of a CMO or marketing strategist. Step number 3, review the list of improvements provided by ChatGPT and ask it to elaborate on the points that you favor most. This approach will help you get much better feedback and output from ChatGPT. By the way, don't forget to get the prompt templates from the prompt library just to get started. Now, as I'm signing off and getting ready to record the next lecture, I want you to check out this conversation with ChatGPT as an example of this prompt engineering technique. But if you already understand everything and can go and try and use it on your own, then welcome. That would be a great use of your time. And then see you in the next lecture. Hi and welcome back. As we discussed previously, the true power of AI is finding patterns, analyzing data, and learning from feedback. So we are going to use this power to engineer sequences of prompts that can solve your marketing problems and tasks. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 5 main building blocks of prompt engineering with ChatGPT. The first building block of prompt engineering with ChatGPT is to assign a role and give clear context. Imagine giving a task to a freelancer that doesn't know anything about what you're doing. You need to provide the context. Otherwise, it's hard for technology that doesn't know you to be aligned with your objectives. The second building block is market data. You need to provide ChatGPT with market data that you can rely on, that you know, and that you can validate. So the third building block is your audience. You need to provide this information to ChatGPT so it can adapt its answers to your particular case, your particular audience. Otherwise, it's going to give you more generic, high-level answers, which are not going to help make any conclusions. And obviously, sometimes this kind of answers are going to disappoint us, so we want to provide this information up front. The building block number 4, iterate using marketing frameworks. As we discussed in the previous lectures, ChatGPT knows most of the world's frameworks in most of the world's fields. And in marketing, there are so many frameworks that can help us elaborate on the information that we already have. For example, if we talk about our target audience, there are different ways of segmentation. There are different ways of conducting competitor analysis. So this is where ChatGPT shines and where we can benefit a lot. Building block number 5, last but not least, ask for creative ideas. Once you have the context, the audience data, the market data, you've elaborated using frameworks, you can now generate some awesome creative ideas. And it actually meets the process, it reflects the process that marketers usually have when working on their projects. We start as strategists and finish as poets, as artists. Well, that's exactly what we are going to do with ChatGPT in the following lectures. So in the previous lectures, we discussed about having to give ChatGPT some market data or business data. How do we actually do it? Well, there are a couple of problems with giving ChatGPT some information. Basically, you cannot give a large volume of information to ChatGPT at the moment. And the reason for that is that ChatGPT isn't really connected to the internet. Its knowledge is limited by the year of 2021. And for us working in marketing, we most of the time need to have some more fresh information. Feeding ChatGPT with large volume of information is also not an option because there's a limit in what you can put in a prompt. So what options do we have? Well, first, I hope that soon ChatGPT will be connected to the internet and we will have the chance to simply paste a link and ask to summarize the contents of it. But because it's not a reliable option right now, we need to come up with a couple more. But yes, if you see ChatGPT summarizing your link, don't forget to double check if the numbers are the same. Simply use Command F or Control F in the website and choose some of the data information that ChatGPT provides as a summary to your link. Maybe it's just summarizing the name of the link. I was able to pick some of the details when I asked very specific questions, but it's not very copyable, so in this course we will try different options. If you're watching this in the time when it already works, just skip this step. Okay, let's move on. So our ways to feed more information into a prompt in ChatGPT are the following. The first way is to do your own market research. First, it's important to know what you're writing about and what you're analyzing anyway, because, well, how would you be able to analyze the response? But this option is very time-consuming. It's very high quality, but time consuming. What are our other options? As of February 2023, there is an option to use Bing AI Chat. Don't be afraid if it's still asking you to join the waiting list. It usually approves it quite fast, within a week or two. Basically, Bing AI Chat is ChatGPT connected to the internet, and it's able to perform tasks related to search. And soon Google Bard is coming up too. So I expect it's going to be able to perform these tasks as well. With Bing AI, there are two ways we can prepare the information. The first one is to assign a role, give a research task, describe the industry that you want to research, set limitations and preferences. For example, you can set preferred data sources. I love to add the resources that are considered reliable, like Deloitte, Statista, Gartner, McKinsey, but not limit to only these resources. In the prompt, I ask it to cite the sources that it uses for its research, and I also provide the volume that I expect as a response. No worries, if that sounds a bit complicated right now, in one of the following lectures in the next section, I will show a step-by-step practical guide on how to do that. And for those who already know it, I will give a signal when you can skip it. I hope that everyone is going to be satisfied. So let's summarize. To get relevant results from ChatGPT, we want to feed it with some market or business data. To do that, we can either do our own research or use AI systems that can summarize volumes of information and are connected to the internet. If we find a short summary online, which is usually not enough, we can paste it straight to ChatGPT, but it really doesn't work every single time. Well, simply because sometimes these summaries aren't enough or they're hard to find. See you in the next lectures. Take care. Let's talk about how we can significantly improve the results using the prompt refinements. Tip number 1 is to simply regenerate response. You'll be surprised at how different the responses may get from attempt to attempt. Tip number 2 is to rate the response. When you rate a response in ChatGPT, it asks you exactly what you didn't like. After your feedback, it suggests an alternative response, and for me, it worked quite well. Way number 3 is just ask what you need. And refinements can be like be concise or write in simple English, or sort this by alphabet or by value or whatever criteria you may find effective. You can also ask to summarize this into a particular amount of text. I'll provide more of these templates in the resources of this lecture, so be sure to check it out. And by the way, it's also in the prompt library. All right, let's move on. Number 4 is my favorite, and it's about the output format. You can either put it in your prompt right away or ask to rewrite in the refinement. I like to ask to write in a table format because for me, it's a comfortable way to quickly digest information. Also, I noticed that it improves precision in the output. By the way, if you need to paste your table into ChatGPT, just type "put this data into a table" and then paste your table. It will look messy in your prompt, but most of the time it figures it out correctly. Alternatively, you might want to ask to output the format in Markdown or HTML. All right, let's summarize. Use refinements to significantly improve the results that you get from ChatGPT, regenerate the responses, ask for refinements that you need, and customize the formats. I hope that these 4 simple tips will help you improve the results that you're getting with ChatGPT. And I hope that it's going to be fast and effortless. See you in a few seconds in the next lecture. Now we've learned how to use the most important prompt engineering approaches for marketers using ChatGPT. But Really, passive learning without practice and feedback isn't as effective. And I want you to take the most of the time you spend with the course. So here's an activity for us. Define a goal of your prompt. Then use the prompt engineering techniques that we've discussed in this section. Create a prompt for your typical task. Try to combine different prompt engineering techniques if needed. Then submit it in the Q&A section, or just send me a message if you want to be more private. And I will provide you with my detailed feedback on your prompt. Sure, this won't take as much of your time, but it will definitely improve the way you use these prompt engineering techniques and how flexibly you can think about them. So that's it. See you there. Hi everyone, I'm excited to finally talk with you about ChatGPT custom instructions. So let's talk about their benefits, their limitation. We'll have a few presets for custom instructions, the general use one, and one that you can customize for yourself, particularly to enhance and automate your ChatGPT functionality to make your marketing efforts even more efficient. So let's start. So what are ChatGPT custom instructions? Custom instructions are a new feature still in beta added to ChatGPT by OpenAI, and it makes ChatGPT consider your personal instructions for every prompt, both information about yourself and the way you want ChatGPT to respond. The great thing about custom instructions for ChatGPT is that they are available for all ChatGPT plans, both free one and the plus one, and can be accessed through settings and beta window on ChatGPT website. At the moment, it's actually the competitive advantage of ChatGPT, as Google Bard and Claude don't have this functionality yet. So what are the benefits of ChatGPT custom instructions? You can tailor ChatGPT responses to your recurring needs. You can save time by typing less things all over again, which is already a bit annoying sometimes, and can improve your communication, make it more efficient. And if you test really well, it can even make ChatGPT sound a bit more like you. So what are the limitations of ChatGPT custom instructions? The main limitation that I can't handle with some kind of a workaround is that ChatGPT custom instructions don't follow your instructions, partially or completely. Well, the feature is still in beta, and we can expect it to work better in the future, but it's still beta. It can work beta. All right, anyway, let's move on. There is no preset switch yet, so if I have a couple of sets of custom instructions, I can switch back and forth between them quickly, and I can change them within a conversation. Sometimes that's a bit uncomfortable, but maybe in the future iterations that would be fixed. OpenAI? Okay, let's move on. Your context may change more frequently than custom instructions can handle. For example, if you change the context within a conversation, or you need your conversation for a few different purposes and a few different contexts, then I would turn the custom instructions off and then set the dynamics myself. Now, we can define two different types of custom instructions in marketing. So that could be either very general marketing use, so you can consolidate your personal level information, organization information, the industry you're working on, and can help you maintain that consistency across all of the tasks that you complete. We'll have a look at how it works in a few seconds. And specific use. You can customize for your very specific job function that's repeating. For example, for your PPC workflow, or your copywriting, or management, or data analysis. So here are a few tips for creating effective custom instructions. Maintain a singular focus. When you take a photograph, in most cases, you want one object to be in the center of attention. And so it's here. Avoid merging multiple specific uses in a general purpose custom instruction. Avoid any contradictions and oxymorons. So don't ask GPT to be both analytical and super duper creative at the same time, because the responses will be very mixed and confused. I would also recommend to outsource your repetitive tasks. So think of things that you repetitively type into ChatGPT, or things that you recurrently do yourself. How can you allocate them into the custom instructions so that you don't have to explain things all over again? The shorter custom instructions, the better. So I suggest that you think as an SEO specialist. Think in terms of keywords. Optimize the keywords for better word-to-meaning ratio. You need to have less copy, but more actionable words, more things that ChatGPT's language model can stick to when choosing how to answer. And that way you'll have the most stable results. And actually, it's something that I noticed from many thought leaders in this AI area. When they share their custom instructions, they give long sentences, very emotional, but in fact, you could cut that sentence into 3 to 4 words that ChatGPT would understand. For example, asking it to give no disclaimers. And yeah, don't forget the limitations in the amount of symbols. At the moment, it's 1500 symbols in each of the boxes are given here for a reason. And one more important tip, and I think that's the most important one, test and calibrate every change that you make to your favorite custom instruction. Don't get tempted to change multiple things at the same time, because that way you won't know what worked for you better. As the feature still doesn't work 100% stably, test your changes with 10 to 15 prompts that you regularly do, and refine them accordingly if you see that something doesn't work. So here's the structure of general purpose marketing custom instructions that we'll work on in this course. We actually have an example of such instructions that you can simply copy and paste into your ChatGPT, and you can access it in the resources of this course, and I will show you exactly where. So here's the structure of a custom instruction that works for me, and I tested a lot of them. So in the first section, you tell about your experience, your background, your industry, and typical tasks that you will give. You can also say what kinds of answers you prefer all of the time, but that would be something that I would ask you to customize for yourself, but later on. In the second section, when you explain how you want ChatGPT to respond to you, you start by introducing the role, then you describe the formatting and response style, then describe the reasoning process that you want ChatGPT to go through. That's actually the place for your favorite prompt engineering techniques that you can also actually get from this course. And there's a whole dedicated section to prompt engineering techniques in this course. So feel free to add those techniques into this part of custom instructions, especially if there's one that particularly works for you most of the time. For me, that's chain of thought. Then you can explain what you want in each case. For example, you can do if conditions. If this, then do this. But don't go too deep with it, because that might introduce a contradiction or conflict when you ask for things that contradict each other. And then last but not least, limitations. For me, that's the most important thing, because my flow with ChatGPT consists of more removing stuff and clarifying stuff than adding things. So I want ChatGPT to refrain from its cliches and in the copy that it often uses. And there are words that you knew that are sometimes used, but then with the release of and the popularity of ChatGPT, you see those words and phrases in every single post. And it's such a marker of AI-generated content. In the end, we'll discuss a couple of useful add-ons that you can add on top of your custom instructions, but I actually removed it from the preset that I use. And there is a reason for that as well, because I don't want to waste the tokens. But I sometimes go back and paste those depending on what I'm working on. Now, let's talk about making custom instructions, well, custom. specific use for yourself. So in the first section, you want to describe your current situation, your profession, your product industry, goals, background, target audience, your activity. And by activity, I mean your goals that you're working on, the typical tasks, and maybe even KPIs, if they can be understood by ChatGPT. Maybe without numbers, because you don't want to ruin the confidentiality. And as an option, you can add what types of answers you like. And the second section would go the same pattern, but you just want to customize it all to yourself. The role, the response style, the reasoning, the conditions, the limitations, the structure stays the same, the details would differ. So I recommend to focus more on your needs in this case and something more specific. For example, create custom instructions for PPC or for SEO work that you're doing. So keep in mind this structure, but just tailor it to more specific parts of the job that you're doing. All right, in the next video, we'll have a look at a demo of how our general purpose custom instructions work. I'll share my prompt, actually taken as a preset from this course. We'll go to ChatGPT, use GPT-4, and have a look at how this works with custom instructions and without custom instructions. So here we are in the prompt book of this course, the resource that you can always refer to, and go back here. So let's go to the custom instructions for marketing specialists. Here are the custom instructions that I have here. Important part, we can describe the tasks that we typically give to Chat, describe the answers that we want, and our ability to understand information at a certain level. I don't want ChatGPT to be forced to provide all the information in a beginner-friendly form. And I also describe what I'm going to be doing. Now, the most fun begins in how you would like ChatGPT to respond. So I give a role, then positive rules, the formatting. I want API format, for example, for better visual and psychological perception of my content. I want the responses to be organized and marked up visually more for my perception, because I understand whether the answer is relevant or not, or good or bad for me when I can skim it really fast. I want the breakpoints between the paragraphs, and so on and so on. You can pause the course and read it, or you can actually go and copy and paste and play around with these custom instructions, which I really encourage you to do. I added the chain of thought prompting. I think it's very adaptable to many use cases that we can have, and when it's not possible and not needed, ChatGPT won't trigger this custom instruction. And the negative rules, I also use them because these words have become such a cliche of ChatGPT. I instantly see that it's a ChatGPT post when ChatGPT uses these words in the posts, simply because, well, there's nothing wrong with this vocabulary, but it's just overused by ChatGPT recently. And every single answer that I ask for, it just puts one of these words, even maybe as a signature, or maybe because it's just so popular, I don't know. But it just happens, and I don't want to sound like everyone else who generates text with ChatGPT. So let's move on. Now let's zoom in and have a look at the prompt. This is actually a prompt from the copywriting section of this course, but I included the placement, the topic, the audience, and a couple of arguments to the prompt. You can also find the prompt in the prompt book in the copywriting section right here. There are actually a lot of prompts. So here's the result that we received. Feel free to pause the course to read through the response. I can already see some of the things that are a stopper for me, and a signature that the copy hasn't been even edited after being generated by ChatGPT. First, the emoji everywhere, the rocket emoji, which is such a cliche in 2023, and we're heading into 2024 already. All right, unleash your true leadership potential. So that's the cliche that I don't want here. All right, understand the difference. Again, unlock right? Unleash. These are things that sound a lot like GPT to me. So let's have a look at the actionable advice that ChatGPT provided us with. And I don't see that really actionable, because delegate effectively, okay, delegate might be, but empower your team and maximize productivity is definitely not actionable. It's very abstract. Develop strong communication, again, very abstract. Sounds good on paper, but in real world, it's easier said than done. So I'm trying to save this post a little bit with my follow-up. I want the desire section to be more detailed by adding a recommended read and to rewrite the copy so that the reader can instantly apply these techniques. Again, a lot of words here, but let's have a look. Delegate effectively, empower your team to take ownership of projects. It's still not very actionable. It's not something I will do tomorrow when I come to work. Free up your time for strategic initiatives. Again, it sounds very motivational, but not as contentful and actionable as I wanted it to be. One more word from the list of words that are used in every ChatGPT response. Ensure your vision and objectives resonate with every team member. All right, learning adaptability. At least we have one recommended read here, which is already something. It's not a bad read. Okay, now I want a short post caption to get the audience into swiping the carousel. And it's not short. It duplicates what we have in the beginning of the carousel here. I mean, it's a pure duplication word for word. So I wouldn't do it myself because it definitely doesn't catch attention. We have one call to action, second call to action that's the same. We have the words from the stop list again and again. All right, this is great that we have such a vivid example here, but this for some reason happens to me all the time. So I really don't want the same words to happen in every single post. I'm not saying this response is bad. This is actually something that you can improve later by adding your inputs. But let's have a look at the base. Can we make a better base so that we avoid fixing the same things? Let's go and have a look at the example with custom instructions. Straight away, I can see that the sentences are sharper. Transition from A to B, that's a classical move. Do less, not more. I can see that these sentences are catchier, they're shorter. As headlines, they are better. And I don't see that cliche and those words from my stop list everywhere. I'm sure that somewhere they will pop up. Interest, okay, know the difference. Marketing disciplines and managing people are not the same. I like that it put the caps to keep the attention. Right, the meat of the post. Let's have a look at the meat of the post. 3 pro techniques for future leaders. Actionable insights to hone your management skills. Delegate, don't dictate. So it's basically the same thing. It's great because it's comparable. Assign tasks that align with the team members' strengths. Well, this is already much more actionable. I can see that it can be done tomorrow. Okay, and there's a metaphor, and I can see why, because we have this in our custom instruction. Let's have a look here in our custom instruction. So that's this part triggered. All right. Emotional intelligence, recognize and manage emotions in yourself and others. All right. Again, easier said than done, but it's very specific because managing and recognizing emotions in yourself and others is already an actionable pattern that you can take. Number 3 says regular feedback loops. Create an environment where feedback is welcomed and acted upon. And then action. Oh, there's the word from the list. I would definitely edit it, but it's just one word from my whole list. And in the previous section, and in the previous option, there were a lot of them. So it's less editing for me. Now I want to, but I think we can still pull a bit of a better answer here. So I'm going to do the same follow-up here. Make desire section more detailed by adding a recommended read and rewrite so that the reader can instantly apply these techniques. So master these 3 pro techniques today. Immediate steps to elevate your marketing skills. No wait required. I would remove that. I like the M- from APA formatting. Love it. I can see that it's followed. Quick tip: identify your team's unique skills today, assign tasks accordingly tomorrow. It already uses this rhetorical pattern with today and tomorrow. We have the recommended read here, and it's relevant. And there's this instant application. That's what I was missing in the previous response without custom instructions. During your next team meeting, open a discussion on individual strength. Assign one small project or task aligned with these strengths. That is really valuable, and I think that could have actually make it to one of my posts in the future. And yeah, there's this analogy from my custom instructions that I didn't ask for right here, but you can see it from custom instructions. I think it's quite usable. And it's easy to memorize such content, actually. Now, emotional intelligence. Quick tips: start a journal. Already very actionable. Great read, and I actually recommend to follow Travis Bradbury on LinkedIn. Writes great stuff. So take note of situations today that trigger negative emotions. Discuss with a mentor or coach to identify proactive coping strategies. Great, love it. And feedback loops. Quick tip: introduce bi-weekly Feedback Friday. Thanks for the feedback by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen. Schedule recurring bi-weekly meeting dedicated to open feedback. It's something you can instantly do when you come to work. Love it. It makes such a better post. Now let's write a short caption to get the audience into swiping the carousel. And you can see that this one is actually short. So there's a hook that's different from the one that's on the carousel. There's one call to action without repetition, and I don't see anything from my stop list. Love it. So guys, how do you find these custom instructions? I think this does a much better job with custom instructions, especially when you use ChatGPT and GPT-4 model. These custom instructions work seamlessly with the prompts that we have in our prompt book, and I'm excited to hear your feedback on how that worked for you. See you in a couple of minutes in the next lectures. Now that you have the general use custom instructions, how do you transform the same structure into something more specific? In the first section, you want to describe your current situation, your profession, product, industry, goals, background, target audience. You also want to specify your activity, your goals, your typical tasks. For example, if you're an SEO, your typical tasks would be very specific. Not just as you're doing SEO, but your tasks would include writing messages for link building, generating lists of keywords, analyzing keywords, grouping keywords, and so on. So enumerate your typical tasks and maybe even KPIs. As an option, you can mention which answers you like. The section 2 would have the same pattern, the same structure, but again, be more specific about that use case that you want for yourself. And then save the custom instruction once it's tested. Now there's one more thing that we should talk about when we discuss custom instructions. So the add-ons allow to modify the response in the end of it. Here are a couple of cool things that I want. So here are a couple of cool add-ons that I found useful for myself. First, in the end, ask 2 critical questions from the point of view of my CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. But that could be any of your stakeholders. For example, that could be your customer in automotive industry or the product owner of a video editing app. Next, you can ask ChatGPT to suggest 3 smart follow-up requests to develop the conversation and deliver on the task so that you don't have to think on the refinement that much. In order to evaluate your response more critically, you may want ChatGPT to respond with pros and cons in the end of its response. Or you can implement self-ask technique by asking ChatGPT to ask you 3 questions in the end and request some information to improve the response even further. And one more useful add-on is to add a brief summary of the response. It's especially useful when you like to receive long response or you ask questions that result in longer response by ChatGPT and you want to quickly understand whether it's relevant or not. Alright, that's it. Let's quickly summarize. Custom instructions can save time, but until the feature performs consistently, don't expect too much of it. Focus on automating things that you repetitively fix in ChatGPT responses or you repetitively write in your prompts. It's not actually necessary to use custom instructions all of the time. In cases when your context changes really fast, sometimes even during one conversation, you might really just turn the custom instructions off. While creating custom instructions, think in terms of context, writing style, formatting, reasoning, and limitations. And last but not least, test your ideas, one thing at a time. If you don't see that idea applied consistently, just remove it from custom instructions. Because in custom instructions, less is actually more. I hope that the general use custom instructions and some of the other examples that we have in the resource section of this course will be really useful to you and you will enjoy using them and that would help you be more efficient. But I also hope that now you're able to construct your own custom instructions in ChatGPT. Thank you so much for sticking with the course, and I'm excited to see you in the rest of the lectures. Cheers, bye. Hi, I'm just here with a quick update on running research-based tasks like analyzing the marketing landscape or finding some best practices in marketing for different formats, strategies, audiences, and campaigns. Well, first, the ChatGPT Plus already has the web browsing functionality, but there's a problem with it. It doesn't access many websites, it takes a lot of time, and it still hallucinates a lot. It's a good option, but it's not always perfect. It's possible that by the time you're watching this, OpenAI and Microsoft have improved it, but that's just not the case yet. That's why we'll be reviewing the second option. The second option to collect data is to find a plugin that accesses external links, for example, like a link reader. But these plugins are still at the early stage and often produce errors and don't always work the way you expect them to. And there's the third option. And so far, it's my favorite one. It's actually the reason why I'm here with this lecture. It's called Perplexity AI. So it's basically a research-based AI tool, and it's like search in GPT Plus with a copilot, which is also known as AutoGPT. I suggest that as you go along the course, you try our research-based tasks with Perplexity AI instead of ChatGPT or Bing, and just have a look and decide for yourself how it works. And by the way, its free functionality will be good enough for most of us here. If you switch on the Copilot button, it will ask you additional questions and follow-ups that are always very relevant, and it will actually make your results so much better in the end. I love how Perplexity provides accurate results and references. It also searches videos, which is awesome. So I think it's a much better solution to collect data for analyzing the marketing landscape, for example, or audience information. If for some reason you can't use Perplexity AI, consider U.com, which is an alternative AI search solution. I hope that you find it useful and it helps you find the insights that you are looking for much, much faster. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to ask you something. Please consider reviewing or at least ranking this course. It takes a lot of time to put it all together, to research, to record and edit those videos. And your feedback helps me record more updates like this one and get more motivation to produce more content for you. Well, anyway, I'm excited to see you in the next lectures, and until then, cheers! Today's 1-minute ChatGPT tip is about proofreading and editing your copy. For example, for a social media post. ChatGPT was taught that it's important to grab attention in the beginning of the post. And usually ChatGPT starts writing social media posts with something like attention and audience or exciting news, something. Remove that that nonsense. I mean, it's too generic and it's too obvious that it's ChatGPT. Second tip, watch out for sentence constructions with from something to something, as it's very typical for ChatGPT. One more construction is not only something, but also something else. And whether you want to do something or you want to do something else. And yeah, and one more thing, while editing those posts and sending them to stakeholders, pay special attention to the hashtags that ChatGPT suggests, and be really cautious about those emojis. Maybe try using emojis for navigation purpose, not just spread them wherever ChatGPT suggests. So be extra cautious, as this might give out a text generated by AI, and it might look not very trustworthy. Yeah, that's it. Guess I'm a bit over a minute, but I hope these were quite useful for the time that you spent with those tips. Cheers. Bye. So, what is Code Interpreter and why it's important? How it works and how to enable it in ChatGPT. As we discussed previously, ChatGPT has lots of limitations. You can't upload or download anything. For example, if you wanted to show it a diagram or analyze something, it can't make charts, it can't run code in the interface. Well, Code Interpreter is here to change all of that. Code Interpreter is a new feature in ChatGPT, particularly in the 4 model, which runs Python code in the Python working environment, basically. So it's a Python environment where you can execute Python code to perform almost any task you like. Unfortunately, it's only available with ChatGPT Plus, and for me as a marketer, this feature finally makes a much bigger bang for $20 a month. It may sound like a feature built for coders, but it can also help us marketers with tons of tasks. And surely, we haven't uncovered all of the potential yet. But let's start. Well, the crucial ability here is to perform various tasks using your files. Yes, you can now upload your file and execute regular prompts with it. Finally. And by the way, all prompts within this course keep working. Except that with Code Interpreter, you'll want to ask ChatGPT to refer to your file as an input. Additionally, you can ask for an output, and ChatGPT will create a file or infographic for you. So yeah, it opens up endless use cases for all users, and I'd say especially for marketing specialists. So here are some of the use cases to consider. Process and visualize data from market reports. Classify keywords by search intent from your Google Search Console. Analyze your marketing surveys and create user persona from them. Match your tone of voice on a whole new level. Get ChatGPT to finalize and format your Excel files and create derived metrics from your data. And of course, get ChatGPT to seek insights from your data. All of this either needed workarounds or wasn't possible at all until Code Interpreter was released. Now, are there any limitations? Of course there are. ChatGPT Code Interpreter can't access internet yet. It can freeze or make mistakes when given too much information. And it doesn't really understand all file formats yet. So let's go and enable it in your ChatGPT Plus. First, yes, you need that GPT Plus account. Go to Settings, open Beta Features, enable Code Interpreter, start a new chat, choose GPT-4 model with Code Interpreter. And that's it. Code Interpreter is probably the most important improvement to ChatGPT so far in terms of expanding marketing capabilities. So do make sure that you spend enough time with it, and I'm sure that it will pay off. Personally, I'm going to invest a lot of time in it, and recording new lectures with new use cases. So I'm excited to see in the new lectures, particularly with this update on Code Interpreter. At first, there will be a separate section regarding Code Interpreter. And when it stops being that new, I will just put all the lectures accordingly across the sections and the structure of this course. Anyway, see you in the next lecture. Now, let's talk about some of the most important tips for prompting Code Interpreter so that you can apply them to almost any use case known yet. So first, make sure that the data you provide is already neat, accurate, and understandable. Second, don't provide too much data. Although I'm 100% sure that a year or two from now, the capabilities will be much bigger and it won't be a problem at all. But if you're watching it in the summer of 2023, that's the case. Next, don't upload any confidential data until Code Interpreter creates a data control setting. I'm sure it will happen in the future, but we're still in the beta, so there's no such feature yet. Next, when applicable, use chain of thought prompting technique that we discussed earlier in the course. I found it quite logical and working smooth most of the time. You will want to ask to process and summarize the data first, or do most of work you need in one take with one file. Otherwise, ChatGPT will forget the path to your file and you might get incomplete results. Okay, that's not much, but let's summarize anyway. In this lecture, we shared some essential tips for using the Code Interpreter. Here are the main points. Ensure the data you provide is neat and accurate for the best results. Avoid providing too much data at once. Do not upload confidential data until ChatGPT introduces data control setting. Use the chain of thought prompting technique for a smoother experience. Aim to process and summarize data in one go to prevent the loss of the file path. Remember to practice and experiment with the Code Interpreter to uncover its full potential. It will take time, but again, it will pay off. And it's actually much easier to do as OpenAI has increased the cap of messages that you can use with GPT-4 to 50 within 3 hours. Maybe at the time of watching this lecture, there's no limit at all. But anyway, I thought it's worth noting it. Okay, see you in a few seconds in the next lecture. That's all, folks. Joking. It's just the beginning. Well, meanwhile, if you found this free mini course useful and practical, please don't forget to rank it. I'm doing this apart from my full-time job and fathership, so your reviews help me find more time and energy to put all of this together. If you want to dig deeper into ChatGPT marketing, be sure to check out my full course on ChatGPT for marketing on Udemy. In it, we dig deeper into rapid strategy development with ChatGPT, idea generation, video scripting, copywriting, matching brand's tone and voice. Here's a cool deal for everyone who got this far in my free course. I'm giving the best price that Udemy can give. It's $9.99 to all of my students here. Feel free to use this promo code. I'm attaching the link in the resources of this bonus lecture. Well, anyway, even if it's not for you, it's no problem, no strings attached. Just saying that I have this cool thing and it's worth to at least check out the list of content that's there. So yeah, go have a look and don't miss any future educational announcements. They are on this course because I'm planning to record a few more lectures as news come. Thanks again for taking this course. See you soon. Cheers. Bye. Oh, and by the way, if you're into it, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or TikTok, where I share more tips on generative AI, marketing, and ChatGPT in particular. So yeah, see you there.